Ahead of this year's Wimbledon Grand Slam, a number of major names in tennis announced that they unfortunately won't be participating in the event. Among them are Alexander Zverev of Germany and Dominic Thiem of Austria. Both have their own reasons for not playing at the Grand Slam this year, but it's still disappointing for fans of tennis around the world. We'll be discussing that and more in today's video. First, why is Zverev skipping Wimbledon? Zverev is arguably one of the biggest names in tennis at the moment, ranked as the world number 2, and with a reputation like his, it's odd that he'd choose to sit out an event as huge as Wimbledon Grand Slam. However, that's exactly what he's doing this year. It's understandable though, considering that early in June, he faced off against Rafael Nadal at Roland Garros and ended up tearing 3 ligaments in his right ankle. The athlete underwent surgery shortly after the match, but that kind of injury doesn't tend to heal in less than a month. It makes sense that he would opt out of Wimbledon, losing out on the opportunity to improve his previous performances at the club in 2017 and 2021. As of yet, we don't know when the German will return to the ATP Tour, but we're all eagerly awaiting the moment he pops back onto the scene and shows us all why he recently moved up to the 2nd spot in the Pepperstone ATP rankings. Up next, the reason why Thiem opted out. Dominic Thiem is a little less cut and dried than Zverev. While Zverev had a legitimate physical concern that led him to the decision to not play at Wimbledon, the Austrian does not. Instead, Thiem's reason lies in his current record at the ATP. He's the former world number 3, but he's recently been suffering from a series of bad games that have made him reconsider his involvement in the tour. He recently came back to the tour in April after a long 9-month hiatus following a wrist injury that put him out of commission. Following that return, Thiem has lost every one of 6 games on the tour, which has understandably made him rethink his condition and whether he was fit to play at the top level that Wimbledon demands of its players. As a result, he decided that he was going to sit the event out and take some time to recover and improve his form to the point where he's comfortable with his performance. Sometimes the injury itself isn't all you need to recover from. Something like that definitely does a number on an athlete's form, and it takes a lot of effort to get back into the shape that you were before the accident happened. We're not sure when Dominic will be back on the court, but we hope it's sooner rather than later, and that when he does, he's in top form. He hasn't had a good match on the grass in London since 2017, so it's still unfortunate that he won't get his shot at it this year. Now, what did they say? Before we move on, we've got to talk about what the 2 tennis players actually had to say about them missing out on Wimbledon. Dominic said that instead of playing at Wimbledon, he's going to set his feet on clay at an event in Salzburg. Salzburg is less of a high-profile event than Wimbledon, so Thiem probably feels more comfortable trying to restore his form over there. He hasn't had much luck in his comeback since April and currently sits at number 352 in the ATP rankings. He recently spoke at a press conference in Austria about his performance, though he's been reluctant to talk about his problems for a while now. He said that he'd been defeated in 34 out of 35 practice sets that he's played since returning, which would obviously take a toll on someone's self-confidence. However, he also stated that he's noticed his game improving a little and that he's finally doing some damage with his shots. Now he's looking to put a bit more pressure on himself at Salzburg, but Wimbledon is a bit too intense for him at the moment. Zverev spoke out a bit about his injury earlier in June, stating that surgery was undoubtedly the best choice for him when it came to returning to competition as quickly as possible. Despite that, it might be another couple months before he's back on the court. It must have been really disappointing to find out he wasn't going to be back in shape for the Grand Slam, especially since he would have been the 2nd seed in the event. Zverev and Thiem are just 2 of a larger group that won't be participating at Wimbledon this year. Some others include world number 1 Naomi Osaka, who's recovering from an Achilles injury, and Jeannie Bouchard, who is a former finalist at Wimbledon and chose not to participate in response to the WTA's decision not to award ranking points. No matter the reason for their lack of involvement in the event this year, we're still sad that we won't be seeing these huge players taking their skills to the court. Time for some other news. First up, Humbert arrives without rackets. Hugo Humbert's been playing tennis professionally since 2016, so you'd think he'd have the basics of the sport down. But at Wimbledon this week, the 24-year-old made a pretty rookie mistake before he arrived at the venue. Hubert came to Wimbledon's number 2 court with pretty much all the essentials, his shoes, hat, and bag, but he forgot a few tiny little things: his rackets. That's right, he showed up for his tennis match against Casper Ruud without the one thing he really needed, and you could tell he was more than a little embarrassed. After everyone at the court waited 90 minutes for a rain delay, the young player walked up to the umpire and quite sincerely apologized to him over not bringing any equipment to play with. Luckily though, the crowd just had to wait a few minutes before someone ran onto the court and supplied Humbert with 3 rackets, prompting the audience to cheer for the end of a long wait. You could say, we're glad it didn't cause much of a racket. Jokes aside, the embarrassment might have thrown Humbert off, because he ended up losing the first set to Ruud pretty harshly. However, he soon got back into his stride and took the next 3 sets in spectacular fashion. It was a pretty big shock for everyone that witnessed it, since Rudd was the 3rd seed at the event, and Humbert's highest-ranking ATP was just number 25. After this, we're likely to see him shoot up in the ATP rankings. Next, we have Nadal's coach on his return to Wimbledon. Rafael Nadal is 36 years old, and he's already built a legend that will live on in the sport of tennis for decades to come. He's already a 22-time Grand Slam champion, and he recently added a 14th Roland Garros crown to his name. Shortly after that, Nadal underwent 2 sessions of pulsed radiofrequency therapy in an effort to combat his Mueller-Weiss syndrome and return to the upcoming Wimbledon Grand Slam in top shape. His long coach, Francois Roig, told interviewers from ATPTour.com that these therapy sessions really showed him how badly Nadal wanted to get back onto the grass again, since in Roig's view, he was already in great shape. He also expressed that Nadal's drive and intensity continue to surprise him, as well as how quickly he can return to form, especially after injuries that would be debilitating to others' performances. He's already had his opening match with Argentine Cerundolo, and though Roig felt that he didn't start off playing amazing tennis and struggled a bit midway through the rounds, but he did think that such a performance after being away from a grass court for 3 years is commendable. What most concerned Roig, though, was how Nadal would come up against Djokovic. He figures that he has a better chance of winning against him on the grass than a hard court at the moment, but only time will tell if that possibility can be converted to a win. Finally, Tan angers her doubles partner. Harmony Tan recently came up against her idol and tennis legend Serena Williams in the first round of the Wimbledon Grand Slam. It seemed pretty lopsided in favor of Williams, who might arguably be the greatest female tennis player of all time, and one of the best overall. But in a shocking turn of events, the 24-year-old Tan, in her first ever Wimbledon, took down the giant that was Williams by winning 3 out of 4 games. It was possibly more surprising for Tan than anyone else, as the Wimbledon newcomer entered the court in fear of her opponent, expecting to only take a few games. It has to be said that she did have a certain advantage heading into this matchup, since her coach was a former #1 player herself and had played against Serena at least 3 times in her career. It's not known if she was given specific pointers, but Harmony did make it a point to thank her coach in her post-match interview. That's a wrap for this video. Are you as disappointed as us about Zverev and Thiem skipping Wimbledon this year? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.